Business Takeout presents
The Cocktale Hour with L.A. Wade.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Cocktale Hour. It's your girl, this is L.A. Wade, and over here we
have Benmio McCrea in
yes,
the house.
the thespian. I really wanted to be able to say the thespian. Tell me about your thespian adventures thus far.
My thespian adventures thus far. Well, I've been at it a long time. Wow.
Okay, let me help.
40 years. I don't know. I started
40 years you've been acting?
Well, I started in high school.
Yes, I wanted to talk about your journey because I know it starts in Philadelphia.
Yep, started in Philadelphia. Everything started in Philadelphia.
Everything started in Philadelphia. Were your parents also from Philadelphia? I know they were visual artists.
Yeah, my parents are both Philadelphians. They both grew up there. My mother, and when my parents met, my mother was in college at Moore College of Art. She was an art student, a painter and a sculptor. And my father, he was a creative person, and he was earning a living as a sign painter. So, back in the day, before we had digital sign creation, people were, doing the lettering and all that by hand. And so that's how he earned a living. And then he also played piano, though not professionally. He was a pretty good musician from what I understand.
And those two people came together and created you.
Yes. In the
Yes.
early 60s. And it was a very turbulent, I guess, time for, in the country and for, I guess, interracial relationships in general at that time. So eventually my parents did break up. I didn't get to know my father really because he passed as a young person in his 30s from asthma.
Oh, wow.
But I feel like I carry his spirit inside me and some of his creativity.
Well, of course, that is very clear. And in terms of never a replacement father, but somebody who helped to guide you, I think I read something about David Guten.
Yeah, my big brother growing up, I guess we were matched together through the Jewish Federation.
Yes.
My mom, I have two sisters. We have different fathers, and for the most part, all of us grew up, just with my mother. And then so at certain points, she, tried to kind of give us some grounding. And so I was matched with David Guten, as my big brother. And he was an avid theater goer, still is. And he introduced me to the world of theater by taking me to my first professional play in Philadelphia. It was a play called The Miser by Moliere, which was a farce, which I didn't know anything about farces or anything about theater back in those days, but I just thought it was hysterically funny.
Yes.
And it just activated my imagination in a way that, I really thought about acting.
I could see that. And it's funny that you noticed that at that age, because obviously now you know more about Moliere and the Miser, but understanding that he was known for that, being that type of playwright. And I'm just imagining a younger person looking at something like that, and it definitely making sense for them to be like, this is awesome.
Yeah. Before getting into theater, I kind of got lost in television.
Yes.
I watched a lot of television as a kid.
What were your go-tos?
A lot of cartoons back in the day, actually.
Yes, I learned about it through Bugs Bunny.
Bugs Bunny, yeah. Actually, all the Looney Tunes were amazing escapes. So Looney Tunes. What else? Little Rascals and all that kind of thing from my era growing up. But My early years were pretty tumultuous, in the household. And so I think I kind of went into myself a bit,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how I kind of escaped some of the trauma, I would say,
Right.
by watching a lot of television. And you could try to have a conversation with me, and if I was watching something, I wouldn't, wouldn't be able to hear you at all. So,
Oh, wow. So you would zero in.
totally immersed.
I
Totally
love
immersed.
it. I love it. So yeah, back to how old were you around when you first saw that play?
I think 12.
Oh yeah.
12 or 13.
Very influential time in terms of
Yeah, I had a bar mitzvah at 13. David and my family were there. So it would have been around that time or just before. Yeah.
Yes. Wow. The idea of that play being essentially the conflict between love and money, and how this woman chooses the penniless man versus the rich man, even though he wasn't asking anything of her family.
Indeed.
Do you relate to this story in any way? Do you see it happening in these days?
I don't know, but I think, in terms of life, I'm definitely not driven by money, and I feel like I have a really rich home life. I have a beautiful wife and a new puppy now.
Aww.
And we have a grown kid, Jordan, who I became a parent by marriage.
Yes. Very nice.
And
Yeah.
and so I think I value relationships and experiences. I consider myself, just a very lucky person in life in general, to have kind of gone through some of the stuff I've gone through, and then just kind of, I wouldn't say landed on my feet, because I always felt like I knew where I was going, or I had a direction. And I think a lot of that was because of theater, and then falling into the high school for creative and performing arts. Really got me going, as an actor, as a drama major, and also as a dancer, because while I was at that school, I got to train in ballet and modern.
And you're not talking like just a little bit of dancing. You fully got a dance scholarship, so you couldn't be really bad at all.
No, I was pretty good. I didn't continue with it. I didn't never envision myself as being a concert dancer, though. Sometimes I think about, like, oh, what would that have been like?
Yeah.
But I did go on after Kappa, Creative and Performing Arts, to study at Syracuse University. I studied musical theater.
Oh, you were close by.
Well, upstate New York to Philly. Yeah. It wasn't that far.
Yeah.
But definitely a world away.
Oh, I meant close by to me in Toronto.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Close to Toronto and close to Niagara Falls and Buffalo. Yeah. That was interesting. I kind of planned going to knowing that I was going to go to Syracuse when I was graduating from high school. I went shopping to get stuff and supplies and whatnot, coats and boots, and I got all this winter gear, like I was going to go to the Antarctica. So I was like very, very well prepared. But when I got there, though it was somewhat cold, very cold, it wasn't nearly as Arctic as I was thinking it was going to be.
People they say a lot of things. Oh, it's too cold up there. And I'm like, it's the same temperature as New York. It's not really. Sometimes the wind can make it like a little colder, but for the most part, you want to not stay away, but if you want to experience true winter, go to Winnipeg in Canada. Then Manitoba, you'll get the real deal over there. Montreal even has a way worse of a reputation in terms of the winter than Toronto. We're pretty good over there. Yeah.
Toronto is a great city. It's a beautiful city. I haven't spent a whole lot of time there, but I did get to experience it.
Well, you should take your beautiful wife over. What I wanted to tell you this, that when I was, kind of wondering who you were as a person, I found your wife while I was looking for you, and she was giving a breakdown of your engagement, and she was just so excited. And I think it was 8 years ago, because I think you've been married for a certain.
Yeah, 2014 is we got married.
Yeah.
And, that's interesting. My wife is an alpha woman. She coaches alpha women in love and relationships. And it was funny when we met at a New Year's Eve party. And she was working on her one-woman play show at the time when we met. And it was a play about all of her past relationships.
This is exactly what I'm working on.
Oh, really?
Yes, I am exactly working on the same concept. I need to interview her. Maybe she could be my mentor.
I'm sure she could. Her play was called Evolution of a Love Addict.
My show's called The Adventures of a Recovering Sex Addict.
Ah, that's
because you'll see my show is called The Cocktale Hour, but you'll notice how it's spelled.
Yes, I did notice that. And I was wondering how that came to be, how you arrived at that moniker.
Well, it's a good thing that this isn't a steady interview. We can have this conversation. But the cocktail came from a show that I started called Cocktails with LA, The Adventures of a Recovering Sex Addict. And so my cocktail started after being married for 16 years, my father dying, and then my whole life imploding, including my marriage and the repressed memories from sexual abuse that I had suffered. And I love this idea of comedy and tragedy. They go so well together. And so I never talk about my story from a place of, this is my story and everyone in the world should feel bad for me. No.
Yeah, well, it's life, and that we have our ups and we have our downs.
Exactly.
And, so this platform seems like a vehicle for you to kind of have reinvented your life to a degree.
Exactly. And that's what I wanted to share with you when you said about this around the time that your father hadn't been there and that period of trauma. These are our gifts. This is what has been a gifting to us. And of course, at the time that we're experiencing it, it doesn't feel like a gift. Like, this is the worst gift ever.
Yeah.
But if you can get to the other side.
Yeah, you have to, if you do the work and you process that history, I think, at a certain point, it doesn't necessarily, you don't want it to define you, but it's a part of you. And so,
hence the cocktail hour, because I don't want to be just seen. And really the recovering sex addict was the idea that through my abandonment issues, I would barter sex for love and all of that other stuff. So, I went on this adventure interviewing people about love, sex, dating, relationships.
You and my wife could have a great conversation.
Oh, I'm telling you, I'm going to interview her next.
Yeah, she and her partner Denshay Lee, they have a podcast called My Holistic Life, HOE.
I think I've heard of it.
Life.
Oh, wow.
So there's a play on words there, but the HOE stands for happiness over everything.
Oh, so my God.
Happiness over everything.
Is she home? I need to talk to her. We need to talk to her after this is over. Don't go
She is home.
I hope she's watching.
It's President's Day, so we're both
Oh, yes,
home
it's
today.
Family Day here. We call it Family Day over here.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. That's just great. I thought your wife was full of energy, and I had never met you, obviously, before or talked to you before. So I wondered, what was your energy going to be like in juxtaposition to this fire woman that you have chosen to be your wife?
Well, I definitely am a counterbalance, I would say. Yes. She's the social butterfly of the family. She is the more vocal one. I'm not that vocal. She's, I don't use my words as well as she does. Wow. But I'm the calm one. And I tend to have a calming effect on most people, I think.
Yeah, and she must love that about you. But you are not wondering where you're going to get access to the fire and any characters that you have to play. You just have to think about your wife, and then you can bring it
Yes.
up.
Well, she definitely keeps me young. I just turned 60, and
you definitely look young.
yeah, and so I make it a point to keep up with her and her antics.
Her antics. Oh, that's funny. So tell me more about. There's something that I read, and I can't remember what it was that I read, but something around the opera, the Academy of Music. Is that around the same time?
Well, that's going back to school. Other than having a scholarship to Philadelphia Civic Ballet, I had some performances, Opera Ebony in Philadelphia.
Did you ever get teased?
What's that?
Did you ever get teased? A black man doing ballet back in those days?
Well, no, not so much, because at that point I was in a performing arts school. So everyone were performers. There's a lot of amazing alumni that kind of came out of Kappa, and other artists that maybe were there for a time, Boys to Men and different artists that came out of the school. So, our school is very much like Fame, the movie Fame.
I was going to ask you that. If it
was just like that. So,
did you get a speech by Debbie Allen?
Well, we had, they had Debbie Allen. We had LaDiva Davis.
Tell me about it.
LaDiva Davis would, she's a diva dance teacher at the school, and she wasn't the only teacher there, but if I was to make a comparison or look for a contemporary to Debbie Allen in our setting, it would have been LaDiva Davis.
And do you remember what that speech was like? What was she saying?
Well, it's not so much what she was saying. It's just a matter of how she cared for her students, and the level of care in her instruction, and preparing people for becoming professional, and having a serious attitude and discipline. It's all about discipline in dance and in all the arts, but I would say particularly in those dance classes with her, there was a high level of discipline that would be required for you to kind of do well.
I see. You're going to straighten up in her presence, I guess.
Yeah. But, I think, we had a lot of different disciplines. We had, besides performing arts at the school, we also had visual arts and literary arts at the school. So we had writers, and we had artists, visual artists, painters, sculptors, and the talent level was just like off the charts. I mean, you could see the work of the students. Like, a lot of it was looking at a young, Rembrandt or, something like that. I mean, the level of artistry, no matter what the discipline was, whether it's music, we had a lot of, exceptional musicians, and not just musicians, but also composers.
Right.
The writers would be writing, and even like in the yearbook, the writing students would be working on the yearbook and contributing articles and all that kind of thing.
Right.
Everybody really practiced their crafts to a high degree.
And so this is what has shaped you as an actor.
Absolutely. I mean, that was the foundation for everything that kind of came afterwards.
Yeah. Was it a little while after that you went into Broadway?
Well, I have not done Broadway. I would love to do Broadway at some point.
What is an equity?
But I did do off Broadway.
What is an equity card? when you're off Broadway?
Actors Equity is the professional actors union in theater. So usually when you're starting out as an actor, everybody's wanting to get their actors equity card so that they can work professionally.
I see. In theater.
In theater, yeah. And then if you're working in television and films, you would be a member of SAG, Screen Actors Guild, and AFTRA, American Federation of Radio and Television.
I've heard people give shout outs to them when they win awards.
Yeah.
Have you never decided to come to Toronto? They film so many things in Toronto and in Vancouver.
I think it's going to happen at some point. It hasn't happened yet to come there to work, but I would love to.
Yeah, they have some great things here. Now,
there's a lot of great actors there.
There are tons. Let's jump into that then for a second. When it comes to acting, since we are talking to a thespian, when you define yourself as a thespian versus an actor, is it to?
Well, I think it means the same. It means
this work that you've put in to be this thing.
It means the same thing.
I know, but I mean, obviously, the word thespian is not the same as actor, and it separates people from, or it makes them look it up, right?
It does. I mean, I think, when I chose that to use that word on the website, I mean, it's more about, it's not only about just acting. It's it's I guess a dramatic life or theatrical life, which I think. It's not just about theater, it's also about film and television and performance as a whole. So that's why I thought it fit particularly well.
I think from meeting you right now for the first time, I can kind of get that. Also reading about Paul Robeson and and his idea of the truth, that as artists being the gatekeepers of truth. I feel like as an actor or a thespian, you're working towards this search for truth. Would that be a truth for you?
Absolutely. And the characters that you portray, I mean, to do it justice, you're looking for the truth of the human experience. Mm-hmm. So that, when you're taking on a role, you're really walking in the footsteps of those characters that you're portraying.
How have you gone on a search for truth in your own life? And is it the same process that you kind of metaphorically or symbolically go through when playing a character?
Well, I think in our daily lives, you don't necessarily have to search for truth, because every day that you breathe, you do it truthfully. You don't have to think about how you breathe. You just breathe. But when you walk in the footsteps of someone else, then you really have to think about, okay, how does that person breathe or not breathe? How they're constricted or restricted in their mind, soul, or body.
Yeah. How do you do that?
Observation, a lot of observation. I know when you're coming up as a young actor and you're studying, they encourage you to journal, to observe people, observe behavior, so that you can kind of incorporate it into your work. As I was saying earlier, I'm not that, historically, I haven't been that much of a vocal person, but I have always been a very visual person and a very observant person. So if you saw me in different settings, a lot of times I would be kind of quiet off to the corner and just really watching and taking stuff in. I think that, has helped me in certain ways in the work, and just in terms of like navigating life, I would say.
Yeah. Because I was talking to a friend of mine who is from Nigeria, and he lives here in Toronto, and he wants to be an actor. And I always kind of push at him to say, how do you know how to experience the life of a North American person if what you've always known is being a Nigerian person? And it's like, I read a lot, but really, and he must watch a lot of television, but then those are just caricatures of characters. So I just wonder for yourself, if you were ever to have to play another culture, a Black person in a different culture that had, like, from the UK or from.
Well, I've done Middle Eastern once before in a role, and so you have to do your bit of dialect work. So that's taking some time and listening, working with the person. I had a friend of a friend who was from Morocco, and I kind of use that as my basis for the dialect.
What it makes me think about are people who, you were mentioning the breath, and the way somebody speaks culturally has a lot to do with also how they breathe. So it made me think of that because we have a different cadence. We do things differently. When you talked about your boots just a little while ago at the beginning of our conversation, I was like, you sounded like a total Canadian that's on the East Coast of the country. I
am an East Coaster. It's interesting. I always, and people always say I don't really have an accent, and Philadelphia has a very thick, accent, almost like New York does. But
yeah.
I don't know how I escaped.
This is what I want to know.
Well, I didn't. It's not something that I actually. That's not something I actually worked at. I think. I don't really have an explanation of why I don't necessarily have a regionalism in that kind of a way.
Yes.
As a youngster, from the time I was born up until maybe the time I was 5, we did travel around a bit, to New York and Cincinnati and different places. But I was back in Philadelphia, by the time I was in 3rd grade or maybe slightly before 3rd grade.
Right.
So I grew up in Philadelphia. I did all the things that you would do in Philadelphia, hanging out in South Street. So, all the kids in school with me had those Philadelphian accents. I just don't know how I escaped it. Maybe it was my mother didn't really have a heavy accent.
Where's she from?
I mean, she grew up in Philly.
She didn't have it either.
So I don't have a real explanation for it. But
do you think that it's hurt or helped your acting career?
Maybe helped.
Maybe helped
because I only think because it's more neutral, and neutral is more universal.
Yes.
So, but whether you're from Brooklyn, well, say Mayor of Easttown is a really popular, successful show that's out now. That's based in the Philadelphia area. So it's like the first show that really features that kind of a regionalism in a mainstream television production. And so it's an opportunity for the actors that are in that area to work and showcase their natural accent. But we hear New York accents and Southern accents all the time in different shows.
All the time.
And particularly Brooklyn, is featured quite a bit. And it doesn't matter if the show is based in New York or the show is based anywhere else in the country, that Brooklyn accent seems to translate or travels well to other regions.
Yes.
So that's an accent that can serve you, I think.
Absolutely. It's funny that you say that, because when a lot of people from Toronto that are melanated are from the Caribbean. And
Mm,
when we hear people from the United States do Caribbean accents, we're all just like, oh God, no, stop, please just stop. We just find it to be such, and that's because they try to do a Jamaican accent to cover the bases of all accents, of no matter if
right.
you're from the Bahamas or from Grenada. It's like it's a Jamaican styled accent, to your point about Brooklyn.
Right.
And you
So,
hear so
that
much.
gets back to being specific in the work, and when you're inhabiting a character, it's like, well, who is this character? Where are they really from? And then what's their background? What are the circumstances of the story? And then getting in there and being truthful to that requires that specific focus to give
Yes,
that specific truth.
yes,
A lot of Brits come over and Australians come over to the
they
States,
do
and
it.
they do quite well with their dialect work. You
Yes,
know,
yes, they
but
do really well. Like that, I don't know his name, but in that show Snowfall, that,
yes, yeah,
like,
yeah,
I'm just like amazed that
yeah,
this that he
yeah.
has
Well,
it.
there's, I mean, there's the list of British actors that come over and work in the States
And
are,
take your work from you.
well, it's people view it that way. I don't necessarily view it that way, but I think the industry does maybe value the British and Australian actors in a way where maybe they look that in that direction a lot of times before they look locally.
Yes.
Um, Maybe it's sexier. I don't know.
I don't know if it's sexier. I don't know about that. But I was interviewing a different actor, and he gets a lot of his breaks through the his white counterparts. And these are the people that have helped him. And he was like, I probably would work more in line with what he envisioned for himself acting if he's almost like he's trying to get a black card in the same way that there's an equity card. He knows he's black. He's not like mixed and
Yeah,
not even mixed or
yeah.
anything. Just, he said getting into those black films can help him become more of a star in a sense in where he is, because the audience will receive him in a different way and make him into kind of like, do you ever feel that same
Good.
kind of tension?
No, I mean I understand what that viewpoint is. Ultimately, it's about the work and showing up in a way where you can't be denied. So talent and excellence can't be denied at a certain point. And so your real obligation is to do the work in a way that's truthful and powerful, where people notice what you're doing and want to work with you. Um,
Yeah.
and I think some of the politics of the business and some of the positioning, it's good to strategize in terms of like see, and I think from a marketing point of view and
Mhm.
getting yourself out there, those are questions that are good to ask. But at the end of the day, it's about like what are you really doing, and how are you really showing up?
Yes, the famous, what are you bringing to the table? Yes. Well, it's funny because I've just made a note because I wanted to make sure, and you brought it up right now so I can touch on it, that I read that you said you should play to your essence and your strengths when choosing roles. And
Well,
that in a way,
I think that's particularly useful, and I think I spoke about that in terms of advice to people starting out. I think um, you know you work from a place of what you know is easier than in terms of easier than jumping into things that you don't know or require a stretch. So when
Mhm.
you're first starting out, if you do have a sense of what your essence is, or how people view you, or how you would be cast in the short term, that's a direction that is good for people to go in.
Yeah.
ultimately you want to go from there and get a certain amount of experience so that you're comfortable to kind of open up your world and go deeper into the work where you can have the tools to research characters away in a way where where you just expand. So as an actor, as a person,
Yeah, expand. Play.
the essence is what's there. So like what people see or assume about you when they see you.
Yes. And so
You know?
you can't help that because that's just who you are. So when they see
Yeah,
you,
people see you in a certain way just without you opening your mouth. They'll have a certain idea of what to expect.
right. Do you
You know,
feel like that, how does that factor into typecasting, or can you change your essence so that people can try you in different areas?
I don't. I think if you're being truthful, I don't necessarily think you change your essence, but um, you utilize different aspects of yourself for different roles. So I think everybody. We all have our light and our dark. You know, some of
Yes.
the greatest characters that are written are usually gray. They're not necessarily good or bad per se, but they
Right.
do good and bad things.
Like all of us do.
Exactly.
So I want to know, do you think that it sounds like you're saying that you're making a really great presentation for why you should study acting and not just be like, oh, I could do that. I could just become an actor.
Well,
People do that.
there's so much to it. I think you can't just. I mean, a musical instrument, you're not just going to pick it up and play it, right? Because it takes
Practice.
practice and
Skill.
instruction. I mean, you have to either teach yourself or because you can certainly teach yourself how to play an instrument, but it takes study. You don't just instantly, unless you're a computer and you plug it into your, like you see in the movies, you download, a millennium worth of information through the ages and you
Yes.
instantly have it. It doesn't really work that way. So you
No.
have to get the information into your body and your instrument. And that's only the first part of acting. I mean, the that's the maybe the artistic side of it. Then you have the logistical side of it is just being on set and just being able to perform and show up in a way where you can still be truthful and natural and not be distracted by um, the cameras or the other crew members and the pressure of the situation of
Yeah.
being,
It's intense.
it's a lot of pressure. And when you're starting out and you show up on set, everybody knows what they're doing, and you maybe, as a newcomer, you don't have the experience or the chops or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's very pressurized, very pressurized.
Absolutely. And when I read about you, it also said that you were both like an actor, but also a director. And I know a lot of actors will say that. But I would say that this experience that you're explaining about being new on set, when you went from actor to director, that would also feel like something new and a little uncertain about what to do, even though you know that you can do it. There's just that period of insecurity because there's so much expectation.
Yeah, well, along those lines, again, I didn't just jump into it, though you could, take everybody has a 4K camera in their pocket now with iPhones.
Yeah,
So it's not like the old days where you needed a 16 millimeter or 35 millimeter camera to make something. Everybody can make something now.
right.
And so that's kind of exciting. But how to make it, you know, uh, my first experience, was taking class at NYU in the early 90s to learn how to make a film. And again, that's another language, and how to tell stories visually, because it's a visual medium, it's not just about talking heads.
Yes, and
So
that's
you
the
have to.
photographer in you.
Yeah, I mean, there's rules to it, of how to shoot something, and like staying on one side of the line versus the other side of the line. These are things that again, you have to study. So
Because you could make it a lot better if you did. But yeah, that's an interesting thing about storytelling now. I think we're getting such a wider range of perspective that these conventional ways of doing things, while they hold, because it's almost, it's time, it's something that you see as historic, and it has that nostalgia. But then like, when a Quentin Tarantino comes in and does what he did, or Spike Lee and what he
or
did, like,
Spielberg, or yeah,
right, like they just start to create their own almost genre of film.
yeah. Now
Or
Spike is an NYU grad as well, and you know, if you look at any of the great filmmakers, they have a film literacy, like no other. So if you ask a real director or someone who, what their favorite films are, or they think in ways that are not just about story per se, but they actually study how other directors or filmmakers have done things in the past, and then it gets assimilated into their own work. That takes a particular type of, again, focus,
yes.
and again study. So Tarantino, I think he absorbed a lot because he worked in a video store, watching movies while he was working. Spielberg certainly was a student of the craft before he and while he was using the camera.
Yeah.
And all the greats are. So
Yes.
Spike.
I think I read a book that was talking about, and the first line was, if you want to be a film director, grab a camera and make a film. And now you can read the rest of this book.
Absolutely. I think if that's another approach, is like, it just gives you an appreciation. If you jump into it, it gives you an appreciation of what goes into it. It's
Yes.
A script, it basically shoots 1 minute per page, so you have an hour and a half movie that's 100 and whatever pages, 90 pages.
Yes. And when you're applying to, or like auditioning to do 100-page script, how much of that do they actually expect you to memorize?
Well, it depends on the role you're in. So if it's small part, I mean, if you're number one on the call sheet,
Yep.
if you're one of the two main leads, or and you're in all the scenes, then you have a lot of memorization to do.
You have to do that in your audition? How far do they
Well,
let
no,
you
not
go?
for your audition, but
Yeah, how does that work?
If you're auditioning for a lead role, then yeah, you would probably have maybe a 10-page, 12-page. You could have 16 pages, something.
Wow.
It depends on what they need to see.
Yes.
If there's a lot of contrasting scenes, they'll want to see you in the various scenes, so that they know that you can meet the requirements of all those different scenes. So it really depends.
Yes.
But smaller roles, you have 1 page to memorize, and straight and up from there, just depending on the level of the role.
So what was your most challenging audition to date? And why?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have an answer for that one. They're all definitely challenging in that you have to do the same work for each one. So again, they're all different characters. And so from the moment you break it down, no matter the size of the role, like the preparation is the same. So you have to go in again. It's like, where are they from? Where's the story happening? What's happening in the scene? You know, what's going on between the characters and all that. And doing all that research and preparation is the same, no matter if you're doing it even for a one-liner. It's
Right.
that
They don't necessarily provide that information to you.
No, well, you get a either a 1 or 2 line description of your character, or you might get a paragraph if you're lucky.
Wow.
About your character. So and a lot of times, you're not necessarily getting the whole script, so you're not really getting a whole picture of what the arc of a particular character is. If the character has multiple scenes, they may only have you audition with one scene with
Yes.
and you get booked based on that one scene. So it's
interesting. Do you prefer comedy to drama?
I see myself as more of a dramatic person, though my wife thinks I'm hysterical.
I think I believe your wife. I don't know why, but there's like this. It's probably because I read that you were into the clown thing, the becoming a clown for the Ringling Brothers.
Well, that almost happened.
Yeah, but did you?
I thought it was a good idea for a few minutes.
So you never went through an acting class or a clown class?
I never went through a clown class, though. Again, back in high school, I did some clowning.
What does that look like?
Well, I had the hat, and I had my own makeup design and the big coat and everything. And me and my buddy Tony Luke, who now is like a cheesesteak impresario in Philadelphia. He has Tony Luke's Steaks. He's pretty famous for his steaks. But when we were kids, we used to clown together. We even, as kids in the school, when we were clowning, we got hired by an ad agency to do a presentation from Lita Coffee Makers as our clowns. So that was pretty interesting. And that was before Ringling Brothers came to the school. In studying theater, you may or may not have some clown work that you get to do.
So what, can you teach me something? Like, what is clown work? How do I get into the mind of clowning?
If you think about, again, like some of the other clown performers, like Marcel Marceau, where you're doing a lot of, and this is what we were doing in high school, is you're doing scenes and you're doing them silently. So you're using your body and your face to express whatever the emotion is or whatever is going on. It's the exaggerated movement, and again, it's about expressing light and dark. There's, it's a type of theater game, or it can be a type of theater game in your study. So it was like a component of what we learned, I think, in high school, and then we kind of went with it, and it became a thing with us for a little while. And then I don't know, Ringling Brothers came, I think they came specifically to our school to kind of recruit for clown college. And so since we were already clowning, it seemed like a really great idea, but, and so we went to the audition. They had it in this big, I don't know if it was a hotel, in a big ballroom thing, and we had to do our different acts and stuff. And I got accepted.
Wow.
But in order to go, I would have had to drop out of finishing at Kappa,
Oh,
and so I wouldn't have graduated with my class. I would have had to travel to Florida, and I had other ideas for college,
you
and
didn't
I
see
was like,
yourself as a professional clown?
and then I was like, oh, am I really going to be a clown?
It's just
So I kind of chickened out, but I think it's mostly because I wouldn't have been able to finish with my class, and that was really important to me.
So I want to ask you about feeling or centering that self-conscious voice, that imposter syndrome. But I wanted to tell you this in the context of what this show and what Business Takeout is all about. So you heard about the Cocktail Hour, but Business Takeout, because I was always talking about sex and dating and all of that stuff on Cocktails with LA, and Business Takeout was like, there's a whole business side to acting, to sports and entertainment and arts, which is very much what I'm into. And so she has a social enterprise to help promote and empower Black wealth and Black entrepreneurship. Now, as an actor, you have to take on some of those roles of, the acting business versus just the acting.
Absolutely.
Yes. And so you've been breaking down a lot of these things, but when you are the actor who's being hired to do something, how do you stop yourself from that self-consciousness that people can feel in new territory?
I don't know that I don't know that it ever really goes away. Some of that self-consciousness,
What?
but I can
Telling
say,
me Denzel feels self-conscious?
huh?
You telling me that Denzel feels self-conscious, or Julia Roberts, or these people that have been doing these things?
They can, yeah, in certain moments. I don't think it's necessarily a constant, but I think moment to moment, we have moments where we're not fully secure. The more prepared you are doing your prep work, then you can kind of show up and have be somewhat secure in what you're doing, right? But then even if you're wholly prepared and you in your mind and in your physical preparation, you could have done a lot of work, but then you still show up and it's like, well, am I doing the right thing?
Right.
Right. So, or is this what they want? Right.
Exactly. And as a director, do you think about how you would navigate that with actors in the way that you would want it navigated with yourself?
Well, I can appreciate the creative process, and so good directors, good artists in general allow for room for expression, for people to bring their artistry to what they do. If some of the good filmmaking is about good casting, where that if you hire X person, you're going to get an X result, right?
Yes.
So there's some of that, but also in terms of the crew, it's like some of the best directors are not necessarily going to be micromanagers. They're going to look to their people that come onto a film to bring their artistry, whether it's in costumes or visual effects or lighting or whatever. They're going to allow them to express themselves and their artistry in a way that enhances the whole, right? It's about telling the story, and everybody is telling the same story and helping to tell the same story. So it takes the same amount of work to make a bad movie as a good movie, but right, it's the same steps, it's the same process. But at the end of the day, when you're showing up day to day, if you're showing up bringing your artistry to bear, and you're satisfied as an artist with what you're doing, that's the most important thing. right? And
Yes.
then if it comes together in a way where, it's like an Academy Award winning production, that's great. That's gravy, right? Everybody may think that they're working on the best movie, hopefully, when they're doing it.
Yes.
Right. When they sign up, you're not necessarily signing up to work on something bad. You're signing up to work on something good, and you want it to be good. So,
Exactly. Yeah. Can I ask before we wrap up, what is the process of finding a good agent to represent you? What are the characteristics of a good agent?
well, they have to be able to pitch you, I think, in a way. They have to be strong advocates for what you can do and what you can bring to a project. Um,
How can you
you know,
assure that with somebody that, because how did you get your agent then? Because how did they just know that about?
most, I mean, if they don't find, usually they'll find you
Ah,
either through, doing a play or through a role, or you get to, they'll see you in something. Um, I think that's the first way I got my first agent. I think they saw me in a play. And so that's one way. They either see you and they come to you. Or a lot of times in school, you're coming out of one of the schools and they're doing you a showcase. They're coming to the showcases to recruit young talent or new talent.
mhm.
Another good way is through a manager. Like if you have a good manager, and the manager has relationships with different agents,
Okay.
they can get you plugged in that way.
Yes.
Um, and then it's pounding the pavement yourself too, is being strong in what you can do, and you have to believe it for someone else to believe it, right? So
Absolutely.
right.
Absolutely. Do you ever look at people and think, oh, they'd make a good actor, or that
Oh,
person?
absolutely. But again, it's more than just the look. It's like, well, you have to
Well,
bring
you're
some
picking up on their essence, right?
yeah, yeah. Again, but then it requires them to show up in a certain way if they're really going to do it.
I like
Yeah.
it. Okay, your very last question, unless you have one for me. Um, but my question is, and I ask this of everyone, what is it that you thirst for still in your life? You've lived to 60 years old, you said, and are you still thirsty? What keeps you thirsty? And what is the it that are wanting to quench?
Well, I think beyond acting, just in life as a person, I wonder what my contribution at large to the world and society, you know, what you think about legacy, and like, well, what are you contributing as a person? So I think about those things. You know, I driving around LA, and there's so many issues right now. There's homelessness is a big issue that that weighs on my mind a lot, and so I haven't done anything specifically on my own to address that situation, but it's something that definitely weighs on me, and I think about, and I think about folks that are struggling in that way,
Yeah.
um, and then just in terms of the planet, just
Hmm.
the
So
issues. Yeah, there's a
around
lot of, but I
it.
think I think on a human level, the homelessness really gets me, because that's, if you don't have um, a foundation to work from,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
it's hard to do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a short film that I did on homelessness. Well, I haven't done it yet. It's written and it's ready to go. I'll show you after. But it's the idea that, especially for people in the diaspora, that idea of home, and then juxtapose with it is homelessness, is exactly the state of so many of us being actually physically homeless on the street, and those of us that are homeless in our hearts and detached from who we are as people. That's what the gist of this short film is. And it happened because of a chance interaction I had with a homeless individual. And had I not had that, and I was thinking of how afraid I was of this person who actually could have been my uncle or my father. And the person who was sitting next to me, when we drove away from him, because we eventually just, we shoo these people away. And she says, damn, no wonder they're afraid of us. And to me, we've been programmed to be afraid of ourselves. And so when we look at a person who's in need, we are removed from their humanity, from them feeling like they are at home within, not only in an actual physical structure, but within life. And that's like a human narrative of belonging that is so integral to all people. But it had a different sting for me when I recognized that we're all kind of like, not all of us, but there's many of us that are a paycheck away from being that person on the other side of the glass.
Yeah.
And a mental breakdown, something that can trigger that to be your option. And so that's the theme that I tease in the movie. I'm happy to share it with you because maybe you'll do wonderful things with it.
Sure, I'll take a look at it.
Yeah. But these are I have a creative heart. I see things visually as well. I've dreamt about visual things since I was little. I can dream in black and white. I feel like I can control color in some of my dreams. It's really phenomenal. I like going to sleep. But these opportunities to sit with people that are doing the very thing that I haven't dared to do yet is very inspirational. And that's a big part of what Business Takeout wants to do. They want to empower and inspire Black entrepreneurs and people who are building their generational wealth and changing the narrative of our lives. And so the Cocktale Hour is just an intimate yet sobering conversation that allows us to learn about each other through storytelling.
Yeah.
And
I do love these conversations.
Yeah.
I just did one with the Black Wall Street.
I know those
guys. And, and that was on Black creatives and creativity. And it's just stimulating to really, again, to talk to everybody about the various things that we get to talk about.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure to have you. Is there anything else you want people to know about you or how to find you?
Best way is through my website, benmio.com. I have links there that you can find other ways to kind of follow along with social media and whatnot.
Yes. Well, I can't wait to meet your wife. She'll have to be on the Cocktale Hour. And maybe
I'll plug you guys in. You guys will have dynamite time, I'm sure.
I would love that. And maybe, who knows, maybe we'll be making a short film about homelessness together.
Let's do it.
You never know. Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks for watching the Cocktale Hour. We'll be back next Monday. Benmio, don't go anywhere. We want to talk to you after, but we'll see you next week. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
If you enjoy our programming and want to help support Black entrepreneurship, please donate today. www.businesstakeout.com/donate.